All right, everyone, welcome to the next session. Cultivating a sense of belonging is essential for the success of students with disabilities. If you're joining us online, please place your questions in the Q&A panel rather than the chat panel, as chat will not be moderated. For attendees here in the room, please hold your questions until the end of the session. We'll try to get to as many as possible, but if we don't get to them, some presenters will join the chat and try to answer questions individually. Today, we are fortunate to have our speaker, Dr. Jeffrey Ricker, with us. Dr. Ricker earned his PhD degree in cognitive and experimental psychology and was a professor of psychology for 26 years until becoming totally blind. He has recently published articles on adapting to vision loss later in life and authors a blog, in addition to his work as a freelance health and science writer, whose work focuses on disability issues. He will discuss how faculty, staff, and students can work together with administrators to transform campus culture into one that welcomes students with disabilities and understands the enormous benefits their unique perspectives bring to campus life. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Ricker.
Okay, there we go. Can people hear me? All right, so can you hear me? All right, good. All right, thank you very much. When I was a sighted faculty member, I was unaware of the many challenges that first-year students with disabilities faced when trying to navigate the novel demands of higher education. Thus, I had little understanding of my role in helping them to transition into the often confusing college cultural climate. To help them feel that they belonged in college, my experiences since 2017, when I began to lose my vision, have given me an appreciation of the difficulties caused by the feeling that one doesn't belong, by the feeling that one is not welcome because of a disability. I am addressing this presentation to the non-disabled faculty member I used to be, and to anyone else who is similar to my past self. In this presentation, I will argue that we need to help students with disabilities feel welcomed, to feel that they belong in college if we want to give them the best chance of completing their programs of study. So what is belonging and why does it matter? Next slide, please. Factors commonly associated with the concept of belonging include feeling respected, cared about, valued, needed, socially accepted, and important, as well as having a sense of harmony and cohesion and having the means and opportunities to contribute. When we feel that we belong, we feel understood and accepted within the community. We feel welcomed and valued by members of that community. I decided to talk today about belonging because of psychological research that shows that the need to belong is a primary human motive driving our actions. The personality psychologists Roy Baumeister and Mark Leary stated in their influential 1995 article on belonging that, quote, the need to belong is a powerful, fundamental, and extremely pervasive motivation, end quote. Research on post-secondary students has shown conclusively that a sense of belonging is linked to several important outcomes. Increased self-efficacy, which is feeling that you're in control of what happens to you in your daily life. Increased feelings of well-being and self-worth. Increased academic motivation and academic performance. Increased persistence in school. But students with disabilities often experience an absence of belonging. For example, Angelica a neurodivergent student with autism, discussed her distress over the feeling that she did not belong at her university. Next slide, please. I just couldn't fit in. The whole time I was there, I was always just on the outside, looking in at everyone else having the time of their lives, having the best experience they were ever going to have. I just wondered when that was ever going to happen to me. So yeah, for me, it was just really cementing in my you are an outsider status. Students who do not develop a sense of belonging during their first year of college are more likely than others to drop out. And that is exactly what Angelica did. The first year of college is important because students with disabilities face a unique combination of challenges that make the transition to college especially difficult. The first major challenge is a shift in responsibility for developing an education plan from the school to the student. At the primary and secondary levels, schools are responsible for determining the nature of the disability and the appropriate accommodations. Upon entering college, however, the student becomes fully responsible for scheduling diagnostic assessments, reporting the results to disability services, understanding their disability well enough to discuss reasonable accommodations, and self-advocating with faculty and staff if they experience difficulties. Many students do not initially report their disability status. One reason for not reporting their status is the desire to fit in with their non-disabled peers, that is, to belong. These students do not get the accommodations and services they need to succeed in their studies. When they start to have academic difficulties, they are likely to feel as if they do not belong, which puts them at high risk for dropping out. The second major challenge for disabled students involves dealing with the negative attitudes and lack of understanding of peers, faculty, and staff. Because of these negative attitudes, disabled students have difficulty getting the academic and social support they need to succeed in college. The attitudes of faculty undoubtedly have the biggest impact because faculty design and teach the curriculum. Faculty assess academic performance and progress. Students with disabilities report that negative attitudes of faculty are a major obstacle that hinders their academic progress. Faculty are responsible for creating accessible course materials. Students cannot feel as if they belong if they cannot access the course materials. I am a good example of how to create a course that is not as welcoming as it could have been. Perhaps the most important problem was that my teaching style privileged sighted students. In my psychology classes, I put together videos without transcripts or audio description. I wrote copious notes and illustrations on the board. I created online readings that did not, for instance, use alt text to describe graphics. I gave little thought to making the course accessible to the visually impaired because I had perhaps only 3 obviously blind students in my 30+ years of teaching. But after losing my sight, I realized that I probably had had many students with varying degrees of low vision. My example illustrates one barrier that faculty unwittingly create for students with disabilities. This barrier is our ignorance of the needs of many of our students. It is impossible for faculty to have a working knowledge of the many different disabilities reported by our students, but we can seek out the guidance of experts and use professional growth opportunities to learn how to design more inclusive courses. A second barrier that we faculty create for our students with disabilities involves conscious or unconscious bias towards these students. We all have been raised in cultures that teach negative stereotypes about people with disabilities. In general, disability stereotypes include characteristics such as incompetence, dependence, and helplessness. These stereotypes affect our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors automatically and unconsciously. These unconscious effects occur even though most faculty and staff consciously reject these negative stereotypes. For instance, an instructor may, without realizing it, spend more time explaining difficult concepts to a non-disabled student than to a disabled student because unconscious belief that the disabled student is not as capable of benefiting from the instruction. The influence of negative stereotypes often is reflected in low expectations for the academic potential of disabled students. For example, in one experiment, faculty were given descriptions of two students. A disabled student was described in positive terms as having good grades and firm career goals, whereas a non-disabled student was described in negative terms as having mediocre grades and no real career aspirations. The faculty participants still tended to have lower expectations for the academic potential of the disabled student. Faculty tend to have the lowest expectations for students with psychiatric conditions, slightly higher expectations for students with learning disabilities, and the highest expectations for students with physical disabilities. But for all, they are much lower than for non-disabled students. Faculty also tend to discourage disabled students from pursuing a career in their discipline. For example, I was told by an instructor of an online course I enrolled in that my efforts to transition into a career in health and science writing were doomed to failure because of my blindness. What maintains such biases in faculty, even with students who have shown their ability to do well in their classes? One reason for the persistence of negative attitudes is the dominance of the medical model of disability. The medical model equates disability with a physical or mental impairment. For example, an impairment such as deafness is considered to be the disability, with the implication that the disability can be removed only if the person can be made to hear. If the impairment cannot be eliminated, then the student should set their sights lower. No amount of accessibility training will modify the faculty members' low expectations for disabled students. I'll come back to this issue in a bit. But accessibility training is, of course, important because it does offer a serious challenge to the medical model. The accessibility movement derives from the social model of disability. The social model views disability as an outcome of an interaction between an impairment and the social environment in which the person functions. For example, a totally blind student is disabled when she is given an assignment that asks her to interpret color-coded graphs and to use her screen reader to read complex tables that have multiple row and column headings along with merged cells. The disability, but not the impairment, is reduced or eliminated by adding labels to the graphs indicated the colors and by transforming the tables into simple data tables that can be read easily with a screen reader. The social model shifts responsibility for reducing or eliminating disability from the individual to those who create disabling environments. I would like now to briefly discuss what the college or university can do to help make the institution a place that welcomes students with disabilities. I'll focus on interventions designed for faculty, and students. Interventions for faculty. Good, next slide, please. By law, institutions of higher education are required only to provide reasonable accommodations for students with disabilities. This narrow requirement can limit colleges and universities to emphasize accommodations, for example, extended time, interpreters, accessible classrooms, as opposed to proactive initiatives that can promote the development of belonging. Faculty attitudes towards students with disabilities improve after attending educational activities that focused on misconceptions about accommodations, alternative pedagogical methods that are more inclusive. Faculty are understandably concerned about whether or not accommodations lower the academic rigor of their courses or are unfair to other students. Interventions that educate faculty about the limitations associated with a variety of impairments should help faculty to understand the necessity of accommodations. Faculty also do not often know effective teaching methods for students with disabilities. In fact, negative attitudes of faculty sometimes are due to a lack of knowledge about how to teach disabled students. Educational activities that focus on effective teaching methods can help faculty create a more welcoming classroom environment. And then interventions for students. Next slide, please. Put simply, the more that students are engaged with other people on campus, especially student peers and faculty, the more likely, other things being equal, it is that they will persist. Equally important, even among those who persist, students who are more engaged show greater learning gains. Colleges and universities should develop opportunities for students with disabilities to engage socially with peers, faculty, and staff. One way to achieve this goal is to create groups of students with similar disabilities, as well as groups consisting of a variety of disabilities. New students who participate in these groups likely will benefit in several ways. They will get social support from peers, staff, and faculty. They will learn to take pride in their identity as a disabled person. They will improve their ability to advocate for themselves. A good example of such a group at ASU is the Accessibility Coalition, which is an organization led by students. According to their website, the coalition seeks to raise awareness of the experiences of the disabled community, both visible and invisible. It is the goal of the coalition to advocate against ableism and educate on the stigmas impacting members of the Arizona State University community. I learned in my vocational rehabilitation program how valuable these experiences can be. I interacted with staff who had been blind since childhood. I saw that these people had overcome many obstacles to achieve success, both personally and professionally. In conclusion, I hope that my past self has a better understanding of what he needs to do to teach disabled students in his classes. Teaching any student well takes a lot of time and effort. Teaching students with disabilities well requires additional training and careful thought. It is not enough to design a course for non-disabled students and then tack on modifications in an attempt to meet the needs of disabled students in your classes. The ultimate goal is to make sure that all students feel welcomed in your classes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeffrey. Do we have any questions in the room? Jeff, are you open to taking questions? I guess I should ask you first.
Yeah, of course.
Any questions in the room? None online. Actually, there is one online. One question online is, would you say there are other course design factors that can lead to an increase in a sense of belonging? And thank you.
I'm not sure. Could you read the question again?
Would you say there are any other course design factors that can lead to an increase in a sense of belonging?
Other course design factors. I'm not sure what the question is asking. I mean, of course, making the course accessible, making it more inclusive in terms of, like, for example, the universal design for learning, trying to offer alternative assignments for students. One example I can think of is students who are maybe with autism or with something like avoidant personality may have difficulty interacting with some students in group projects, and you may want to offer alternative assignments there. There's all sorts of other factors that could be in there. I'm not really sure how to answer the question in general.
I think you've done a great job, actually. And if anyone in our experience online has any other ideas you want to add to the chat, feel free to do so. Any questions in the room? One question over here. Give us one moment, Jeffrey.
Sure.
Hi, my name is Leslie Golem. I'm actually with AT Still University. I work in the library. And so my question from the library perspective is, how can we support you guys as faculty to make sure not only our content is accessible, but to make sure your design in your classroom is successful as well for students?
That is something I myself need to learn more about, to tell you the truth. So I have not taught. I lost my sight about, 5 years ago. I started losing my sight in 2017 and lost my sight in the last 5 years. I've been trying to educate myself since then about students with disabilities, how to better educate them. And one thing I really would like to know more about is universal design for learning. That's my next project, is to learn a lot more about that. So actually, I should ask you, how do you think you could help me learn these things? Because as I was trying to make clear in my presentation here, this is not something that I was very concerned with until I lost my sight and I realized how big of a problem this was for students. So again, I'm not terribly sure how to answer your question, but I do, when I come back next year, I will have many more experiences that I can share, because I'm in the process of learning all about this.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Great question. We'll continue on learning about that subject throughout many sessions in this conference. And just a round of applause for Dr. Ricker in sharing his experience and his research. We're going to come back to the stage in just a few moments, but if you'd like to refresh your drink or use the services, you're welcome to. And then we'll be back with our next presenter.